do want you to know it is an honor for us to be back with you. We're good? It's on. It's on.
Hello?
How's that? That better?
Bye.
All right, great.
No,
It's,
put it
it's an
over
honor
here.
for us to be here with you, and we want you to know we don't take for granted this opportunity to come and speak to you today. It is an honor. It really is, and so you guys are obviously you're our family and our friends, and so I'm just moving stuff around. Am I okay, Daniel? So not much has changed. I come here late with my slides and everything. And Daniel's going, my life was so much easier without you. so, so anyway, it's good to be here. My wife is going to be sharing this, doing the teaching with me. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time, going down memory lane with you because then I'll get all emotional and it'll just get weird. So that's my fault. Oh, you do have your truck. Praise God. All right. So we're actually going to hand out some modules to you and some manuals that we'll be going through. But before we do that, I thought maybe it'll be good for us to just kind of go through and tell you a little bit about ourselves. Janice is right. We've been trying to remake ourselves a little bit, and you know. And so, do you have that? Are we good? Are we good? Okay, good. All right. So that's our family. You guys met our girls last night. They're all grown up now, and well, they're not all grown up, but well, Hazel's grown up. And yeah, that's Hazel, and that's Layla, the middle one, and that's Haley and Lily is next to me, and so. Yeah, the twins are 11, and Layla is 12. She'll be turning 13 in February. So yeah, the girls are growing up, and so yeah, this is I don't know. This is probably the one of the best things about being I don't know alive, right? It's having my family. They are amazing, and so this is. I'm going to share with you about our credentials here because if I'm going to do this presentation, I'm supposed to tell you about my credentials. But that picture is the best credentials I have right there. So, but yeah, we've been married for 27 years, and we've been in the ministry for 27 years, and grads of University of Nebraska Lincoln, MU, Rochester University in Michigan, and I'm working on a master's now in conflict resolution at Lipscomb University, and so that was really what I wanted to do when I went back to school. And but I always tell people, Greg Moretsky, who's a good friend of mine, bullied me into this master's program at Rochester, and it really took years off my life. And if you're married and your spouse goes back to college, you end up going to college as well. And so my wife read all my papers, had to deal with all my stress and all that stuff. So that's her degree. So we have a picture, I don't have it with us, but all of our wives sitting down with the degrees. And my wife earned that degree more than I did. And so we do prepare and rich facilitation, which we've done here, and that's marriage and premarital counseling, and then we also have been recently certified in grief education, grief method, grief recovery method. So we do grief education, Rule 17 mediators in the state of Missouri, and Rule 31 in Tennessee. Because I'm at Lipscomb, I went through a certification program in mediation there, and certification through conflict coaching at Martha's Vineyard Mediation Program. Long story short, in the world of online, I found this program, and I got a certification through them. And then this program, what we're going to be doing today, is the ICOC Peacemakers Program. And so I don't have time to tell you how I came to all of this. I just say this, that probably about 8 years ago, I was at a ministry training thing in St. Louis that Jeff Mantle hosted, and he had Professor Steve Joyner come in and do a presentation on conflict resolution. And I sat there and I looked and I go, I was born for conflict. It's kind of funny. Yeah, so I think I was born for this. And so 7 years later, actually Paul Bowles and I, about 6 years ago, drove to Lipscomb from here. because Paul was very excited about me getting an education. You need to go back to school. So we drove to Tennessee just to walk around campus and to meet the dean and everyone on campus. And at the time, I couldn't afford it. And so I said, oh, I'll do it later. And so, so here I am now. But learning a lot, it's really helped me. And I can tell you that I think I've spent the vast majority of my life creating conflict and not knowing how to resolve conflict. And so I've really learned a lot about how to manage my own stuff. And so I'm on a quest, I say, to become a peacemaker. But you cannot give what you don't possess. And so I can't give peace if I myself do not possess peace. So that's what I've been working on in a nutshell. Robin, you want to come up and share anything? Let me see.
I'm not going to worry about it.
I'm
mic'd. No, I think, too, when you have 4 daughters, you have to know how to manage conflict.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of practice every day in our home. So that we didn't put that on the credentials, but it should be up there. So.
Well, the first picture was pretty much that.
That's the credentials.
So why don't you stay up here? We'll get started.
Okay.
And so my wife is going to go through this with me. She's going to do some teaching here with me. And it's pretty exciting. We took our church through this, and I think it's been really helpful. So anyway, hopefully you learn a lot. So we've prayed, and I will say this, it's going to feel a little bit like you're, drinking from a fire hose here, right? So by hydrant. So a lot of material. So we're going to hand out just module 1. If you would, and just module 1. We only need module 1 now. If I give you module 2 and 3, it'll just distract me. So just that first one, if you wouldn't mind. So while we're doing that, I tell you what, here's what I want you to do. All right, this will be helpful. We can do this anyway. I want you to look around the room, and I want you to find a reasonably friendly face. Okay, all right, but you're going to partner with this person. This person is going to be your partner for the rest of the day, okay, as we're going to be talking about things, okay? So, yeah, but not your spouse, okay? Not your spouse, not your kid, not anyone like that, all right? So honestly, here's the best thing. If it's someone you don't know at all, it's better in this situation. All right? So if you don't know them at all, it's better. So the least familiar you are with this person, the better it will be for this, okay? So, and then and let me tell you why, because you're going to be talking about a conflict example, all right? And I don't want you to be with someone you know, okay? Because, I just don't want you to be with someone you know, okay? So, not that it's going to be about that person, all right? So you're going to be talking about a conflict example. So you can start thinking of now. I want you to think about a conflict you had. Now, don't pick the most complicated conflict you've had in your life, okay? And don't pick one with your spouse, all right? Let's just not do that today, all right? That's a different. We got premarital, we got marriage counseling we can do with that. But I want you to pick a conflict. I want you to think about it. And I want you to stay with that conflict throughout the day. So this is a conflict, right? This is a conflict with a person. Again, and don't pick something that you're going to be on the floor in tears and we're going to have to mop you up off the floor, okay? Does that make sense? Don't pick the most complicated thing you've ever had in your life, all right? So just a simple conflict, all right? So you can think about that as we go through this. And does everyone have module 1 now? Yes. All right, great. Okay, good. So this program in our fellowship of churches, we are really working on dealing with conflict better. And so I'm on a unity task force with some great people, and we're putting together some really cool stuff on conflict resolution and conflict management. And so David Young is a brother. He's a disciple. He leads a church in Canada. He is a trainer. He's actually put together this training. He's trained a bunch of trainers, and in addition to that training, then like I said, I've been getting additional education as well. And so this is David Jung's program it's his program that he's put together. He works for a institute in Canada, and he does court-appointed mediation. He does training for large companies, as well as he leads a church, and he's a minister, an elder. He's an incredible guy. So he is my mentor. Actually, I texted him this morning to get some information from him, and so it's really cool. He's actually teaching at the Small Church Leaders Workshop in Dallas this weekend. So anyway, wanted to share that with you. And so we're excited to take you through this. And ready to go?
Let's go. Let's do it.
Away we go. All right, let's go. So
Monique has a question.
you can. That's yours.
Yeah.
That's yours. You can write in it. Yeah, please. Oh,
You have a lot of pens in your car? That would be great, right?
yeah. I'm going to get you stranger partners. I'll give you an opportunity to break up here in a second, and then you can sit with your stranger partner.
I love it.
You don't have to sit with them the whole day.
That's when we break up.
Just when we break up, I'll give you opportunities to break into groups. I was stalling while we handed out the packets. Okay, all right, so module 1. All right, next slide. You think the clicker will work, or should we just go for it? All right, good. All right, so here's the first thing, right? So I want you to think about this. All right, it's really, are you a peacemaker? Are you a peace breaker? Or are you a peace faker? Right? Pretty obvious, right? So I say that for a good chunk of my life, I probably was a peace breaker. Yeah. You know what I mean? I was probably a little bit more dissentious, right? Had no problem talking behind people's back. Had no problem even confronting people. But just a peace breaker. And those of you who don't know, I played college football and not trying to stereotype, but it's back in the day it used to be a really aggressive game. I don't know what it is now. It's kind of like touch football now. But back in the day you wanted to hurt the opponent. Now they tell you don't hurt them. Okay, but it lended itself a little bit to kind of violence. In fact, most sports were that way, even basketball. And it was very violent. But I'd say so. I thought, just stirring up trouble and creating conflict. I thought that's how you get things done. Yeah. And to some degree, really, the corporate world still believes that. And I do want to say this: that conflict is a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful opportunity. I believe low level of conflict are just flat out necessary. Mm-hmm. Even in a marriage and in a family, low levels of conflict. At the problem solving stage, you need conflict for intimacy to happen, right? Mm-hmm. You can't have great intimacy in relationships. And it doesn't matter, I'm not just talking about sexual, I'm just talking about intimate relationships, period, unless it goes through a little tension. Mm-hmm. You need those little moments of like friction and go, oh, I'm sorry, oh, I love you, right? You need that, You can't really have closeness. And so there's really no such thing as a relationship without conflict. A relationship without any conflict is kind of not a very close relationship, right? In fact, you got to be willing to risk some things and have the tough conversations. That's when you know you've got something. I didn't really want to say this, but you're kind of getting on my nerves, you know what I'm saying? And, I feel a little conflict with you. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it's great. And we work it out and we hug it out. And then you get comfortable with that over time. Mm-hmm. It's unmanaged conflict over a long period of time that begins to escalate. Yeah. That's unhealthy. Mm-hmm. In fact, when you avoid conflict for long enough, it doesn't go away. It stays there. And then one day, you're like, what's your problem? What's going on? Man, there was something beneath the surface bubbling for a long time. Right? We've all felt that or seen that. We've seen that in our marriage, seen that in our homes. We've seen that a lot. So I want you to think about, where do you land? Home, work, church. Maybe you're the same person in all of those places. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes at work, you're like the peace faker. I'm gonna lose my job. I ain't gonna say nothing. Let it go. And then you come to church, you're just like, we're gonna tear up everything. I mean, we're like what is the problem? You know what I'm saying? Or sometimes at church, you're quiet, and at home, you're like, you're Hellraiser. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, but where do you tend to land? Or you're a peacemaker, a peace breaker, a peace faker? Right? Anyone want to share briefly? Put someone on the spot. Anyone want to say what they are? I already said, I'm a priest, by nature, I'm a peace breaker. I'm working toward being a peacemaker. Which is interesting because in that working toward a peacemaker, I found myself tempted to be a peace faker. You know what I mean? As you get a little bit older in life, some people get a little bit like, get off my lawn, I'll kill all of y'all. You know what I mean? Like, that happens sometimes in life, the older people that are just like angry with the world, you're like, get off my lawn. And then there's some people, they just like, shh, not gonna say anything. Don't want anybody, don't want any trouble, I'm just staying out of it. So anyone want to share? Are you a peace breaker? David?
Yeah, peace faker.
Peace faker? By nature, okay? All right, anyone else? Tammy?
I think I'm a peace maker. I don't want any conflict.
Yeah.
I just want everything to be cool and calm. And if there's something that's going to erupt, I'd rather just shut down and just let it slide.
Let it go. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Definitely a faker.
Faker? Okay. Yes?
I think I'm a peace maker because we stopped to get coffee and the coffee wasn't ready. And we really had to fake it.
That's right. And that's a good indicator right there. When your coffee ain't ready, how do you get? I'm like, somebody's getting fired today. You know what I mean? I'm going all the way to the top. I want the head barista out of here. Yeah.
It depends on where I'm at, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a peace breaker at work.
Okay.
So people use me to be the talking point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's. Yeah. Yeah. So just think.
That's Melissa.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we know what Melissa
Yeah, we
is.
know
but-
what
no, go ahead, Melissa. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think I lean towards being a peace breaker
Okay.
by nature, especially at home. And then I think church and work, like I do lean more towards being a peacemaker.
Okay.
But I think I'm naturally a peace breaker.
Yeah. Yeah. Janice, you concur with that? No, I'm kidding. Don't answer that. Don't answer that. That's a peace breaking. If you answer that, you're going to break peace. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's funny because I feel like with the people I'm like most secure with, I'm either a peace breaker or a peacemaker. With everyone else, I feel like I'm a peacemaker. Because yeah, either I'm gonna be like super like critical or like point out everything I see, or I'm gonna like really see peace. I guess depending on how.
Yeah.
But with people that I don't feel super comfortable with, I probably peace breaker.
Yeah. Yeah. So we all, we tend to, right? We tend one way or another. Do you want to share quickly?
Oh, I'm a peace faker.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, we tend to find each other, these opposites, right? You know what I mean? So you can go to the next slide. All right, so I want you to think about this, all right? So now I want you to find your partner.
Your stranger partner.
Find your stranger partner, someone you don't know that well. You don't have to not know them at all, you know what I'm saying? But find someone, and I want you to move next to them, and I want you to introduce yourself. And then I want you in your own words to give a definition of conflict. And I know you can cheat by looking at the sheet, but just think, what would conflict be in your mind? All right, go ahead. Daniel, do you want me to try the clicker? No?
Hey. Y'all live together.
No, we're partners.
Hey.
No, but I'm saying they're not gonna say the whole day. Like, they're going.
And we're gonna give you about 5 minutes.
Okay, Mom, we have to.
You're trying to be comfortable, aren't you? Look at her. She doesn't have a partner.
Okay.
Lynn, do you have a partner?
Want me to try it?
Do you have a partner, Lynn? All right, I'll let y'all slide this time.
Hey, we just don't want to stir no conflict when we leave after the afternoon and y'all do the third session.
You might be stirring conflict because y'all staying together. That's all I'm saying.
So Daniel, she's your partner. It should just work. It should just work. Oh, okay. This is called. Press boot. There you go. You did. Isn't there a chair back here? I'll get it. I'll get it. I'll get it. There you go. All right.
Thank
All right. We're going to give you about another minute or so. All right. So, okay. So good. All right. So give me a few ideas. What did you think? What do you think conflict is, or in your own words, Shaz?
Jason and I were talking. I said it was when there's a problem that's like disrupting the unity that God wants.
Okay, cool. Like that. Okay, great. Drama. Okay, I like that. All right, good. Reese.
I thought of it as like an exchange between two or more people where they're just at odds with one another.
At odds, like that. Kath. Not in agreement. Okay, good. Davion.
I said a clash of perspectives.
Clash of perspectives. Sir, what's your name?
Nathan.
Different expectations for the outcome.
Okay, great. What's your name?
Nathan.
Nathan. It's good to meet you. Great. John. People don't agree with you. Okay, good, good, good. All those are good. And where did you learn those definitions, right? How did you figure, did anyone ever tell you what conflict was? Did you just kind of evolve into it? Experience it, right? Yeah. Sitcoms. There's a great video from The Office on conflict. That's a great one, yeah.
What'd she say?
Louise said John learned conflict from me. Just a second. We're getting ready to have a conflict. So that's good. Honestly, a lot of what we learn about conflict, it kind of ends up being more like kind of how you feel. You know what I mean? I just feel like there's tension, and you don't know what it is, and so sometimes you're running from something. Sometimes we find ourselves running from or running towards something that we don't really know what it is. So we're going to use a definition. Trust me, this is not the definition for conflict, but this will just be our working definition today. You want to go ahead and read that definition
Yeah.
of conflict?
And it's helpful for us just to have the same definition as we move forward, right? So conflict is an expressed struggle between at least two interdependent parties who perceive incompatible goals, scarce rewards, and interference from the other party in achieving their goals. Or a more simplified definition is needs not met equals conflict. So,
Yeah. Or differences plus tension equals
Equals
conflict,
conflict.
right? Differences plus tension equals conflict. Whatever definition you've been working with, you can think about, is that working for me? right? And maybe up to this point, you've not thought much about it. Where you find people, you find conflict. It is inevitable. And boy, you need not look any further than what's going on. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to just let you in on a secret, okay? All of this tension we have in our country, this is conflict. It's the straw man is race, the straw man is gender, the straw man is politics. All of these things are straw men, or straw women, if you want to say, okay? Doesn't really work the same, straw women. Straw men, okay? All right? That's all it is. This is conflict. It's unresolved, poorly managed conflict over a long period of time. Okay? All of this police stuff and everything that's going on, this is poorly managed conflict over a long period of time. A lot of finger pointing and it's your fault and fire this person and get rid of this person and deal with that. And isn't it great that we keep going back to the same source to fix it? The government? Who happen to be a lot of lawyers. You know what lawyers do?
Oh, yeah.
They fight.
Peace breakers.
They're the best fighters in this country. You mean? They want to win. So we keep voting them in and thinking they're going to fix conflict, and they just keep. You ever hire a lawyer? What do? They try to kill the other person for you. You know what I mean? They try to destroy them. That's not peacemaking. That's peace breaking, okay? And they don't fake it. They go after you in any way they can. So, anyway, that's a whole nother subject for another day, okay? So, let's see. Can we get to the next slide? You can just, there we go. So, I think like this is a helpful slide. You've probably seen this in business meetings and things like that. But really, you're either you're unconsciously incompetent, okay? Meaning that, man, I don't know what I don't know, okay? I don't even know what I don't know. And then you move from unconsciously incompetent to consciously incompetent, meaning I now know that I don't know a lot of stuff. Okay, I mean, and this is the great thing about going back to school for me is that I realize how dumb I am. I was like, I'm going back to school, I'm like, there's a lot I don't know. I mean, I knew there was a lot I don't know until you're sitting in class with really smart people, you're going, oh my gosh. Did I fall asleep when they were talking about this in school? How did I miss all of this stuff? These guys are so smart, and you just realize that you just don't know a lot. Coming to the realization that I write like a fifth grader. Like, my professor's going, that's not college writing. I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? I didn't know that. So, so yeah. And then you get to a point where you're unconsciously competent, which is a good place to be. You're ever sitting around and then something comes out, you're going, I didn't even know I knew that. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, that kind of worked. I guess. We go, where'd you learn that? I don't know where I learned that at. Was I born with that knowledge? No, you weren't. Okay, you learned that somewhere along the way. You just don't even realize that you know more than you know about certain things or certain topics. That's a good place to be, okay? And then you go from there to being consciously competent, which is a dangerous place to be, okay? But you can get there. Now, you are consciously competent about something, okay? Maybe it's just going to the potty. I don't know. You see what I mean? I know how to do that better than anybody in the world. You know what I mean? I know how to do it. You know what I mean? You know how to do your hair. You know how to do something. You're consciously competent about something. You probably think you're conscious about something that you're actually not. But that's another story, right? It's like the first time you get married, you're going into marriage, you go, I know what I'm getting into. Like, no, you don't. You don't even know what you don't know. That's what I like to tell young couples. You have no idea what you don't even know what you don't know yet. I know what I'm doing. I read it on the internet. Okay. So anyway, so that's a good place to be. And so I think this is just helpful for you, right? It's okay as we go through this if you go, I didn't know that. You know what I mean? And as you learn more and more, I think the good place to be is a place of unconscious competence. And I think when you get to a place of conscious competence, it's good to learn something different. Does that make sense? Because as you're learning, you're constantly growing. All right, next slide. Okay, so anyway, we talked about this. Needs not met is conflict. Differences plus tension, it also equals conflict. Next slide. All right, so let's give a little biblical perspective because this is a church, setting. And so, God welcomes conflict and disagreement. And now, in your booklets here are a lot of passages, about conflict. And certainly, I'm not going to go over all of those today. But I do want to talk about one particular conflict, okay? And really, and not surprising, it's between God and Jacob. In Genesis chapter 32, where Jacob wrestles with God. It's good for us to know that God is not afraid of conflict. In fact, God welcomes conflict. And you have this situation where Jacob is wrestling with God. Verse 22 through 30, we'll read that real quick, babe.
Yep, Jacob is wrestling with God. Verse 22. It says, that night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives. That was conflict right there. His 2 female.
It was not God's goal. It was not God's goal. So,
2 female servants and his 11 sons and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that its hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. The man asked him, what is your name? Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome.
no.
Jacob said, please tell me your name. But he replied, why do you ask my name? Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, it is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared.
Amen. Okay, this is full of incredible lessons here. Not to mention that he's married, he's got 2 wives, and he's wrestling with God, and God's a man, all that stuff. Anyway, we're not going to go into all that, but here's what I want you to know. Jacob knew what was going on. Jacob knew he was wrestling with God. And really, I think this is a powerful lesson because really sometimes those interactions you're having with people, they're really about you and God. They're more about you and God than that person. Our struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's not against flesh and blood. So that person, right, it really is a struggle between you and God. It's hard for us to see, but think about if you thought about that in conflict. This is not about you. Although I do want to just knock your block off right now, you know what I mean? This is about me and God. Like, what's happening now? The person that cut you off in traffic, that's me and God. That's me and God problem.
Yeah.
What if that was God driving with me real fast? It was. You know what I mean? It's all about God, or it's not. I mean, it's all about God or it's not. We get to decide what this is really about. And we have that power to decide what this is about.
Yeah.
So really, conflict, it always comes, and that's why I love, this is a great study because Jacob knew what this was really about. I wrestle with God. Don't you love that God that God said, you have wrestled with God and man and overcome. Oh, you gotta love that. You wrestled with God and man and overcome. And I think we can think of the word overcome like, yes, I conquered God and I conquered. No, that's not what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I don't think he's talking about you're now at the top of the hill looking down on God and man. No, that's not what he's talking about. You've overcome. You've overcome yourself. You know what I mean? You've overcome yourself. You've faced yourself and you've dealt with that. Isn't that good?
That's good.
It's really good, isn't it? It's kind of helpful, right? So just to think about that, as we go through. And all of these scriptures, there's plenty of scriptures, James talks about what causes conflict among us. So they come from inside. What causes a conflict among it? They come from inside of us. Okay? And so it's just good for us to know that, right? As we go through this, to be reminded of that. Okay, so next slide. All right. So, James, okay, you can go to the next slide. So, this is good for you to think about. So, there are some conflicts that you engage in, right? Just think about this, all right? We have conflict that happens. And you think about the impact and the frequency, right? So, sometimes there's a rare thing that happens, but it has substantial. Let's use the word substantial, okay? But they have substantial impact. Rarely happens, but it has a substantial impact. I'll give you an example, right? Okay? Your neighbor comes over, punches you in the face. Hopefully that's not happening every day. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But if it happened once, and then he comes and goes, I only did that once, man. You're like, I don't care how many times you did that. You know what I mean? I only did it once. But that impacted me significantly, bro. You know what I mean? Like, we got a real problem here, right? Okay? So, so something that happens once, right?
I think a more practical example would be,
Good.
You have roommates, or even if you're married, like maybe you didn't pay the rent one month, you forgot, or you were really busy. That's rare, but it's substantial, right? I mean, the bank will forgive you once, So I just think even in our homes, in our personal lives, there are things that happen, it doesn't happen a lot, but it can be substantial.
Yeah. Something of great value to you, or very precious to you. Somebody breaks it.
Yeah.
Only happened once. Man, I'm never going to forget that. You know what I mean? Like, it's a problem.
Cheryl
You're like,
had her
I need a
little-
moment.
Her little birds last night with Aphrodite's ashes in them. Can you imagine if one of those got broken?
And I said,
It
oh,
was
sure, I only broke it once.
Like, that's substantial.
So that's right. So, and then there are things that happen rarely, but they have shallow impact.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Can you think of anything that happens rarely? And I know shallow is relative, right? For some people, a dish in the sink is shallow. For some people, like, you left a dish in the sink.
Yeah.
It's really shallow. If you're over the top about it, we'll pray for you, amen. But can you think of a rare event with shallow impact in your life? Anything? Yeah.
Someone forgets to do something that they said they were going to do,
Yeah. Rare occurrence, okay, shallow impact. Yes, go ahead. Nathan? Like it when you lead that way. Yes. There you go.
Good.
That's right. Rare.
I know in our home, with three daughters at home, if one of the girls don't clean out the shower after they take a shower, like, it happens more frequently, which we'll get to. But it's not that big of a deal, but, it can happen once and you can forgive it, or it can happen a lot and it creates all kind of problems.
Which is interesting because for one of the girls, shallow, okay? So it happens frequently, but it's a shallow event for one of the girls. For one of the girls, it happens frequently, and it's a substantial event in her preteen life. You know what I'm saying? For me, I'm going, just clean out the shower. You know what I'm saying? But it's
clean it out and you didn't clean it out well enough.
Yeah. So then there are instances, there are things that happen frequently, but they are substantial. You know what I mean? If you are in a relationship with someone and, they get drunk every weekend and stay out all night or something like that, that's frequent enough, and that's a substantial impact. Over time, 5 years of this, right? This is a problem, okay? None of us are in this situation, but you may, I don't know, I hope not, but you know, you may find someone that's in a relationship with their spouse. Well, their spouse cheats on them once. I only cheated on you once. Well, okay, you know, that's one time too many, bruh. You know, or sis, you know, or something that's happened frequent. Then there's frequent events that are shallow, you know, and so something frequent that maybe, you know, is even kind of cute a little bit is like, oh, my spouse always leaves their shoes by the door. I've asked you not to leave your shoes by the door. You know what I mean? You've been having this conversation regularly, but they keep leaving their shoes by the door, keep leaving their shoes by the door, and you keep picking them up. You keep picking them up. By the way, as long as you keep picking them up, they're going to keep leaving them by the door, but that's a whole other subject. Because it's just kind of the thing, you know? I leave them by the door, you pick them up. That's our thing, honey. So anyway, but yeah, I think as long, you know, but there are frequent things that really have shallow impact. It's good to know the difference, right? Because if everything, everything that happens is substantial, then nothing's substantial. I mean, you're just constantly running around going, like everything is a big deal to this person, you know?
So I think just to add to that, it's important to know, like, what's substantial and what's shallow, like to know the difference in your own life. I think that helps with conflict, just everything not being substantial.
Yeah. Next slide. Okay, so this is good, right? We're disciples. I want you to think about this. You know, what's the greatest command? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, all your soul, all your strength. If you think about this, okay, everyone is in conflict with God. I mean, that's the bottom line, you know. And so your Bible study, it really is an exercise in managing conflict between that person and God, between that person and others. A lot of sin is against other people. You got to work that out. You know what I mean? Do you think you need to apologize for that? Do you think you need to do anything? How do you reconcile that? How do you make that work? You know, and then reconcile with themselves. You know, they've sinned, and some people just really like, you know, that's the grace of God. You know, it teaches us to say, no, but God wants to forgive you. God's merciful. So they've got to let you do the work, be the minister of reconciliation. That's what we are. We're the ministry of reconciliation. We are reconciling people to God and reconciling people to others, which requires that we ourselves are reconciled to God and reconciled to others and reconciled within. We can't be running. It's difficult for us to give reconciliation or to help people get reconciled if inside we're just hacked off all the time.
Yeah.
Ticked off and anxious and worked up, you know? So we've got to do the painstaking work sometimes of being reconciled internally, okay? So that we can be who we need to be for others, for God, and to help others be reconciled. See, right? That's why peace, it's a fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
It is. It's a fruit of the Spirit, peace. God gives you that. He gives you, that's why Jesus came as the Prince of Peace. You know what I mean? That's why he said, blessed are the peacemakers, right? Because peace that's what God wants us to have. Okay, and it's not the absence of conflict. It's being able to catch it at the lowest levels and manage it, right? Okay, because you need it. It's going to be there. In fact, you're totally unrelatably walking around. I have no conflict with anybody in the world. Going, are you in this world? What are you looking? Have you not seen? You don't have some reaction to what's going on around us? Nope, I'm just above it all. No, you're not. Okay? It's impossible. You're out of touch. So you need to be like, yes, I'm struggling. Okay? But man, I'm overcoming with God and with man. Amen? So now we're going to do a little work on our conflict example. Okay, so I ask you to think about a conflict example. And this is important for this to be able to work. Okay? I want you to spend a few minutes writing before you talk. Who was involved in the conflict? Please do not find the worst conflict of your life, okay? But find a conflict, and it'll work. It'll work, all right? Who was involved? Briefly describe what happened. What was said, or what was done by the other person. Write down how it made you feel, okay? Or what it was like for you. Write down how you responded. And listen, it's not a conflict if you said, I responded like Jesus. It's not a conflict. We need a situation where you responded the wrong way. Okay, you know what I mean? All right, I need an actual conflict here, okay? All right, and then how did you feel afterwards? And what has happened since then? So Robin's gonna share her example real quickly, real briefly.
This will be real quick, just so that you guys know how to do this, because you're going to be working with this conflict example today. So my conflict was between me and my neighbor, okay, in the city where we live. So anyway, basically what had happened is my neighbor is maybe 30, and his dad was helping him remodel this house that he had bought, and I had dug up my neighbor's plants. So the houses are really close together, and I dug up my neighbor's plants on his property. So what was said or what was done, my neighbor's father said, "What are you doing? What kind of person destroys someone else's property like this?" So how did it make me feel? Or what was it like for me? I felt very disrespected and confused because I had asked his son if I could do that. His son said, that was fine. So I felt very disrespected and confused. I thought, well, why do you care? It's not your house. I talked to your son. Why isn't he the one talking to me about this? That's how I felt. How did I respond? I said to the dad, I said, I am sorry. I talked to your son, and he said it was okay. How can I make this right?
He's faking.
He's faking. How did I feel afterwards? I still felt confused afterwards because, my neighbor wasn't talking to me. His dad was talking to me about what happened. What has happened since then? I saw the dad the next day. I apologized. I shared my intentions, told him, what my intentions were. And I asked him how I could make it right. And basically the dad said, hey, it's okay. And I said, are you sure we're good? He said yes. So that's my conflict example. So as you work through yours, think of a conflict. It doesn't have, like Vince said, please don't pick the most difficult conflict. But that's an example for you guys to go off on as you work.
And it doesn't have to have worked out that quickly. That was a small thing because we were new to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So we were relatively new, so that was a quick little boom, 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 boom. So, but that, interestingly enough, when the peace breaker found out about that some guy had said something to my wife, you know how I wanted to deal with this. You know what I mean? The way you deal with a guy who's running the ball down the field. You just run over him, you know what I mean? So I had to go, so anyway, that then created a conflict for me. So the piece, Robin was that way, and internally I was going, no, he did not, you know what I mean? But I had to be reminded, I'm new to the neighborhood, and this could be a problem, you know what I mean? So I stayed out of it, which was the best thing for me to do. Anyway, write down yours.
How much time you give them? About 10 minutes?
Give you like 7 minutes, 10 minutes to write that, and then we're going to let you talk among yourself for another 10 minutes.
They just can't hear.
Yes.
So if you can just summarize.
People are sharing. Can repeat what they share.
So it's a little closer right here.
Oh, okay.
So now it's on top of mine.
It's all right.
Yeah, I'll just take it back.
It's working. No, you're making it. It's, let's turn it off. But wait a minute. Is it on?
Let me go back and see if I can make it work.
But the way we're doing it is fine. So,
Say it again.
What do you do when you're in conflict with inanimate objects?
That's a good point.
Oh, now it works.
How does it work?
Okay. Let him do it.
Okay.
He'll be so much happier.
Thank you. It works. Look.
it works. I'll point this way.
Towards the screen.
No, it's this way. All right. So I know you're probably not totally done, and we'll give you a little bit more time. But I want you to go ahead and split up with your stranger partner. You know what I mean? And then I want you to talk about what you've got so far. You'll get a little bit more time to work on this, and you can work on a little bit more at lunch as well. So if you'll go ahead and get with your partner and just share with them about your conflict, that'll be great. Say that again.
Jason Touche and I were visiting the other day. He said, you guys were talking one day and you were quoting me, and then Jason realized.
All right, everyone. So if you need does anyone need a potty break, or can we go just another 20 minutes? We can do another potty. You need a potty break? Okay. I'll tell you what. Let's take 5 minutes, and then we'll come back. And there's snacks in the cafe. There's snacks in the cafe. So let's take 5, and then we're gonna come back, and we're gonna wrap up this first module. Okay? Let's take 5. If you want to keep talking, that's fine. But let's go ahead and get our break in. We're gonna start promptly at 10:15. Thanks. All right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. It's 10:15, and we've got quite a little bit more to get done here. And so I want to wrap this up. So anyway, we'll come back to your conflict. Like I said, during lunch, you'll have a little time to maybe kind of fill in some more details if you want to. I didn't say this, but hopefully you didn't use any names or use fake names. If you did, that's okay. And, you know, yeah. So if they're in the room, then, well, we'll work out that conflict later. So, all right. So I did want to talk about, so we're going to wrap up here, just kind of talk about some sources of conflict. And, you know, if you ever watched, a video, there's plenty of great videos out there about conflict. And there's a lot of work to be done, you know, in the area of peacemaking and conflict resolution. I do want you to know that. And so these skills you learn, these things that you learn, they're going to help you in the congregation, but I think they're also just going to help you in your neighborhood. They're going to help you at work. They're going to help you in life. And so,
Within your family.
yes, within your family, for sure. So the sources of conflict are simple, right? You know, people have conflict because they have different goals and different tasks. And you'll see this at work. You know, and sometimes your boss will say, hey, I want this job done. And he puts the team together, and then, okay, go. And then the team is just instantly in like, there's this tension, you know, who's in charge or who's going to do what task, and you know, and then the relationship might be a little bit awkward, you know, because of some in-office politics or things like that, and all of these kind of things. You've probably seen it happen at work, right? And so really, good management, you know what I mean? They help you with this on the front end, you know, a little bit, you know. And so, you know, and sometimes people don't like it. The reality is, in the military, they don't have a lot of conflict. A lot of times, you go, you're in charge, you do this, you do that. So that's kind of helpful. You kind of go, well, that's his job, you know what I mean? That's not your job. Do your job, right? And if everybody does their job, we get the job done. And so, but yeah, there's different goals, different tasks, different roles. Sometimes there's a role conflict, right? You know, and sometimes there's different values. Values is another reason people fight. You know, you value something more than them, or they don't value that, or, right? Or there's just status differences, okay? You think you're better than me, or they actually are better at you than that. You know what I mean? And it's just, so you have this whole status thing. We all have this thing in us that we want to save face. We don't want to look bad. You know what I mean? And so that's in you, okay? Say what you want, okay? But there's also different perspectives, diverse perspectives. This person has this perspective on this, I have this perspective on that, right? But there's also different ways of dealing with conflict. Some people are peace fakers and some people are peace breakers. And so, you know, you can tend to go, you know, I just deal with my problems. I just, you know, talk about everything. In my house, we talk about everything. Well, that's not how it was in my house. You know what I mean? You know, we just dealt with things. And so because we dealt with everything in our house, there's something wrong with your house. So by definition, like, you're wrong. This is the way you should deal with conflict. Well, maybe your family was wrong. Yelling at each other all the time, screaming and running around crazy. Maybe that was a problem. You know what I mean? But you're not really open to that. So we bring our different ways of dealing with conflict to the table. You know, the whole passive-aggressive, aggressive, and everything in between there, right? And so, and then difference of resources is a major conflict issue, right? We see that going on now, right? Oh, these people don't have this resource. They don't have that resource. We want to take this resource from them and give it to them. And all of these things, these resource issues, and even your opinion about that. Oh, no, you should work for everything in life. Nobody should give you anything. And so it's a resource thing. So that also creates conflict, right? And then who's involved in the decision-making process? That is a huge factor in conflict. Sometimes if you have lousy people making decisions, it creates conflict for everyone. You ever have a boss that can't make a decision? Yes. And everybody's doing, just make a decision, you know what I mean? You know, or just do something, tell us to go somewhere. And it's just everybody's losing their mind because the boss doesn't even know how to not only not make a decision, but communicate that they don't know how to make a decision, all right? Or communicate their weaknesses or differences or whatever, right? That's also maddening, right? And others. This is not an exhaustive list. Can you think of any other things, any other sources of conflict different from that? And maybe you can. But there are many sources of conflict.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I share?
Please.
Just from, okay, so I think, you know, the goal is, usually in conflict we react, right? Like it's just, you just react. And hopefully, you know, this workshop is helping you just to be aware. Like I'm in conflict and I need to manage this in a better way. So like with my example with the dad, my goal was to help my neighbor with his yard, because I just moved into my house and his yard was messy and I wanted to help. I really did. But his dad's role, I didn't understand the dad's role, you know? The dad, I thought the son was the decision maker, when really the dad was the decision maker, because what I found out later is he's a professional contractor, right? So what I see, there are holes and things in his son's yard. So when he comes, it looks a hot mess because he's a professional and I'm just a neighborly gardener, right? I mean, you know. So anyway, that was I didn't know that, right? I didn't know he was a professional. We had different values. The dad valued, this was something that he was doing with his son. It was his son's first house. And they were doing this project together. I wasn't aware of that. I was trying to be helpful.
Robin values being a good neighbor, right? And being neighborly and getting, and
Yes.
she values getting along with people and being neighborly in the neighborhood. I don't value that as much. Just like,
Yeah.
I'm not that old, but I'm a little bit get off my lawn-ish already.
Yeah.
The Christian version, though. I got to still be a Christian, you know. But naturally, I'm not a friendly neighbor at all. I'm not a good neighbor.
Yeah.
No, Robin is a much better neighbor. I'm just like, quit talking to people coming in the house. You know what I mean? So.
But I mean, you know, like when I stepped back and I was, you know, evaluating the situation, I learned so much because the dad was he did landscaping professionally. I'm out there with my little spade, you know, and when he landscaped the front yard, he had sod, he had his measuring stick. I mean, he was professional. I was like, whoa. We had different ways of dealing with conflict, you know. I think when I asked the dad, what can I do to help? He said, just stop. He said, just leave it alone. I was like, oh, I want to fix it. Like, I valued being a good neighbor, and I really wanted to fix the problem. Mm-hmm. He did not want me to. We had different resources, you know. I had my little personal gardening tools, and his tools were much better than mine. And I was deceived as far as who the decision maker was. Like, I literally thought the son was the decision maker. And I learned that really the dad was the decision maker as far as them remodeling the house, doing the yard, and all that stuff. So I think, you know, if you don't know the source, it's really easy to assume.
That's right.
And I was tempted to make assumptions like, who does he think he is? Like, I'm 50 years old. He can't talk to me that way. Is this a racial thing? Like, what's going on? Like, I was assuming a lot of things in my heart because I didn't really think about what's going on here. What's the source of the conflict? So,
which is a really good point, right? So it's easy to assume. And I'm going to tell you, assumptions most likely lead to conflict, okay? Right? Rather than have a conversation. So Robin brought up a really good point. We live in a city, okay, of St. Louis. The city of St. Louis is the oddest place. On my block, We're the only African-American couple. There's an older African-American lady. There's a few single African in an apartment complex. And there's Black Lives Matter signs in a lot of yards, not in my yard. The white people on my block, they love Black lives. Apparently. Apparently. I don't know that for a fact. They got signs up. Maybe it's a defense mechanism, like, don't bomb my house. I don't know what it is. Maybe they're just protecting themselves. Who knows? Just so you know, Black Lives Matter. Stay away from my yard, you know. Thought about that. I don't really know what that means, you know, exactly. I live in the city. I got odd things going on. There's an older white guy who's always out there with a Black Lives Matter sign doing. I'm like, what is happening? Anyway, but it would have been easy for us to just assume, well, this is racial. It's a nice little default mode you can slip into. Oh, that's racial, right? Which then takes me down a whole nother rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So anyway, these things can happen. Assuming that this is racial. Guy, I've talked to that guy since, if that guy's racial, he's you wouldn't know it. That guy is awesome. The dad's awesome. We've had great conversations. The son is awesome, has a different lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? It's different. It's like, so it could have been my thing. Well, y'all got a problem with black people. They don't. They don't. But that could have been the way I could have protected myself, you know? Put that up and made that a thing. On my block, well, only white people have Black Lives Matter signs. I'm gonna make it into a black thing. That make sense? Worthless, useless, only creating more conflict, creating a whole nother false narrative that doesn't even exist. On my block, that narrative doesn't exist, in my opinion, okay? Chris, you had a question? Yes? Very good, thank you. Very good, that's very good. So anyway, we're gonna go here. Next slide here. So that would have been a video, I'm not gonna show it. So anyway, but conflict has levels. These are the levels of conflict. And I want you to notice the arrow on the side there where it says most control, least control. I talked about intrapersonal conflict. Intra, that's within, okay? Conflict comes from within, okay? And then it spreads to other people, okay? And then you may find yourself in an intra-group conflict in the church, in your Bible talk, in your house, okay? And then there could be inter-group conflicts, okay? We create these teams, you know, Democrats versus Republicans, you know, blacks versus whites, you know, whatever group, my group, their group, this group, I'm against that group, you know, Cupies versus Rockbridge, yeah, whatever. Bruins, yes, right. So we just create our, even though we live 1 mile apart on the same street, you know what I mean? So we just create our, not even a mile, we create our group thing, you know what I mean? We like that. That's actually a default mode. We get our group, we even change to fit in the group. It's our group. And then as soon as we do that, we're like, oh, my group's better than yours. And we start looking out at other groups, right? So, but that's, and then there's systemic. Now, which of these do you have the most control over?
You forgot interpersonal.
I said interpersonal? No, I said interpersonal.
You said intergroup.
Intragroup, interpersonal, intergroup, between groups, and then systemic, right? So which one of these do you have the most control over, obviously? That's it. That's all we have control over. And yet, there's people out there telling us, you have control over what happens systemically. You have the power to change the government. You ain't got no power to change the government. You don't have any power, trust me. But they need to tell you that to keep you riled up constantly, to keep you doing kind of what they need you doing, right? I mean, so we're all running around going, we're going to, what are you, I'd love to see you go down to the White House and say, I need to talk to President Biden right now. They will shoot you. You get me? They will shoot you and bury you in the lawn somewhere, and all your the few friends you got to be like, man, I ain't seen Vince in a long time. You know what I mean? You don't have any power. You know what I mean? But what you do have power is to control how you react to all of these systemic things. You do have power to do that. And that is very powerful. You know what I mean? That's really, really, really powerful. Okay? So I think understanding where the real power exists, where the really control is very important. And being able to, in the moment, realize that the only way I'm ever actually going to make any real change is to deal with me.
I think what Chris said is really important, because the more aware you are of your intra-conflict, whether it's an insecurity or whatever, issues we may have, if we can identify that and think, how is this creating conflict with another person or within a group or, whatever, you'll be able to resolve that conflict if you can deal with what's going on in your heart initially.
So I officiate basketball still, and I had a game the other day, and I had a coach, and it was a girls' game, and it's actually been a really competitive game. And so what happens in these games, it becomes the coaches, it always becomes everybody against the officials.
Yeah.
So, we go out on the floor, the three of us, we got stripes on. We're the only people in the gym that don't care who wins, by the way. Just so you know. We don't care. I don't care who wins. But all of them think we're the problem. And I sometimes say, Coach, I don't care who wins this game. You're the only person that cares who wins this game. Between you and I don't care. But the fans are all concerned to kick a fan out, and it's just a mess, But this coach, he's all worked up, during the game, and he really thinks, they really think they can argue with about the call, and I'm just gonna go, you're right, Coach, I'm gonna change the call. Hold on a second, I'll be right back. I'm not gonna change this. What are you talking about? You mean I'm not cheating you? Nobody's cheating you. You just gotta calm down. Now, that's easy to see in that situation with them, but my job is to be the mediator in that game, and I serve in that role. But it's really interesting. It's a little bit of a microcosm of what you end up seeing in the world. Like, Coach, you're not going to control what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
Just let it go. But you keep talking. You know what I mean? It's not going to affect anything that I'm going to do. And then they get into this mind like there's a systemic evil. They're all coming to get me. You're trying to destroy them. I'm like, okay, dude, this is what, but that's kind of what happens to us, right? So that coach can't control me. You think that coach can control Biden? This is how goofy it looks when we get all up in arms about what's going on systemically. It's like, yeah, I don't have Biden on speed dial. And if I did, I'm pretty sure he'd go, thank you, bye-bye. You know what I mean? He's not going to do what I say do. Anyway, so I think it's helpful. Doesn't mean we don't get involved. Doesn't mean I'm not talking about voting, all that stuff. I'm talking about we've still got to be people of peace, in the whole process, all right? So that's the levels of conflict. Is that helpful? That makes sense? All right, good. So, all right, so then I want to talk about this, and we're going to wrap up. So conflict spreads, okay? Conflict spreads. And so, this should be upside down, but I talked about the problem solving stage. Step one, stage one. That's where we want conflict to be. In fact, this probably should be upside down. On the bottom should be problem solving.
Yeah.
That's a good place to be, the problem solving stage. You know what I mean? That's when the conflict is very low level. We can still work it out. We can talk about it. We can make up and we can hug it out and high five. Let's go get some ice cream, or let's go to the game. This is a good place to be. This is where you want all your conflict to be, on the problem solving stage. Mm-hmm. But when you don't deal with it at the problem solving stage, it gets to the personal antagonism stage. You know what I mean? In the personal antagonism stage, that's the point where it's not about the problem anymore. Now it's personal. I mean, it's not about the problem. You see, it goes from the problem to the person. We don't have a problem anymore. You got a problem. You know what I mean? You're flawed. You're jacked up. You know what I mean? You know, and so then it's not about the thing. See, if you can keep it to the problem stage, if you can go to the balcony and look down and go, look at what's happening here, trying to divide us. Well, we can work this out. That's a good place to be. But when you don't get it worked out, now it's like, start looking at the other person a little suspicious. I don't know about them. I'm not really sure. You know?
Less trust.
Less trust. And then once you do that, then you start multiplying issues.
Yeah.
And their breath smell. You know what I mean? Well, I'm not the one whose mother nursed them till they were 8 years old. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? We start talking about all the kind of things in their life, and you're a lousy driver, and you're lazy, and you didn't mow the lawn on time, and you didn't this, and you didn't that. We start multiplying issues. Now they've got all kind of flaws. They're pretty much, by now they're growing horns, you know, kind of like, they're like the devil, you know what I mean, almost, and they got all kind of issues. And you know what's next? Once you make them into a devil, you got to tell everybody else about them. Like, come here, let me tell you about that cow over there, or that dog, or that. I mean, now you got to triangulate others. Now it's us. You got to get other people involved. You got to go to work, and then you see people at work talking about their spouses. If you're triangulating, let me tell you how stupid my spouse is. Or let me tell you how dumb my roommate is. Or let me tell you about black people, about white people, or about this or about that. You got to get other people on your side. You need a whole team of people to validate to you that the other side is evil. You know, so now you've got triangulation, military term. You know what I mean? Triangulate. Next, we must destroy them. You know what I mean? We triangulate. Now we must kill them or crush them, right? Yeah, please.
So I tried to do this in my conflict example with my neighbor's father. So we had this conflict, and inside I was upset that he had talked to me that way. And I went in the house, and I said, "Honey, the neighbor said this to me." And I'm trying, I think he might be, racist or something, because he talked to me this way. And, it was crazy because Vince, I thought he would get involved. Like, I thought he would go and talk to the neighbor's father. And he said, "Robin, did you dig up, the neighbor's plants?" "Yeah, I did. We had a conversation. He said it was okay." He said, "But did the father know that?" "No, I didn't. Why did I need to talk to the father, right? It's not his house." Vince is trying to help me to kind of see things differently, but I was trying to triangulate, make the guy's dad look, like he's evil, like he's an evil person. And he wasn't. He was just, he had skills I knew nothing about. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel terrible. So anyway, I think we can do that when we make assumptions and we're not staying focused on the problem, but it does become personal, and we start assuming that people have bad heart, this, that, and the other, when in my own heart, I had to deal with, like, no, this is my problem. Like, I made a lot of assumptions and didn't know what was really going on, so.
Yeah. So I didn't bite this time, okay?
You did good.
It took a lot of graduate classes to. 10 years ago, I would have been out there, like, where your daddy at? Tell him to meet me here. If he ever opens his, it would have been a mess. So it would have just been sinful. Anyway, so but my wife was unintentionally trying to triangulate. And sometimes we do this with our spouse. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? When we come home from work and we Let me tell you how stupid my boss is. You know,
Yeah.
so then at the company, dinner, your spouse is walking around looking at your boss like, oh yeah, I know you're a moron. I mean, like, you're gonna help them become Christians, by the way. That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like, so, again, it just keeps the internal stuff going.
Yep. Yep.
All it does is just keeps you worked up internally. It doesn't do anything to help you. It's probably taking years off of our lives, if anything. You know what I mean? To just be now, you go to dinner and you're like, oh, I can't talk. Oh yeah, there's a stupid bro. Oh yeah, what's your name? All of that stuff going on. You can't even be this joyful, loving, peaceful, patient, self-control, all the fruits of the Spirit, gentle, kind person that God wants you to be because you got all this angst in you. And that's just about that. You know what I mean? So anyway, this is kind of what happens to us, right? So conflict spreads, then we triangulate, and then it's hostility and polarization. Now we're one step away from, a change in social structure, a divorce, you know what I mean? It's total hostility, and it's intense, right? And now there's boredom, that's hatred now.
Yeah.
We're hostile toward the other person. You know what I mean? What was this about again? What was this conflict about again?
Yeah.
And then that's where someone comes and go, you fighting over that dude? You know what I mean? Like you fight, and now you're angry with that person. Oh, it's a big deal. No, it's not about them. That person is just a blah, 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 and a this, that, and the other. And you're like, you're right, because you're not talking about the conflict anymore. Now it's about the person. You've turned into an evil monster, and they're just irredeemable.
Yep.
There's nothing good about them.
Yep.
They're not created in the image of God. They're just bad, bad, evil. In fact, now you can wipe off, you could disregard them. You could disregard anybody that looks like them. You can disregard the whole, gender of them, the whole race of them. Just disregard them all. They're all bad.
Yeah.
Now that's a healthy place to be, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now you walk around looking over your shoulder.
Find people who agree with you.
All the police are bad all the time.
Yeah.
See that one right there? Watch them. You know what I mean? Now you got to watch everybody.
Yeah.
Now you're really peaceful, right? You're looking over your shoulder, everybody's bad. Everybody's evil all the time. I don't think that's how God wants us to be. Right? I don't think that's where God wants us.
Right.
Right? So, anyway, so then the only next stage is change of social structure. Okay? And this is where you see divorces happen or relationships break up. Because they didn't deal with it on the problem-solving stage. Didn't even deal with it on the personal antagonism stage. Said, man, you guys are going after each other. You know what I mean? What's the problem again? See, at the personal antagonism, you can still go back to the problem. What's the problem? Let's go back to the problem. Yeah, what was the problem? But once you get to issue multiplication, you still can go back. But once you start triangulating, it's tough. Because now you got a church of people on your team. You got a little group on your side. And usually all of them, they're coming to the fire with more gasoline. They're not running there with water. They're running with gasoline. Oh, yeah, here it is. Oh, yeah, I found this out. I talked to such and such. They said that their way too. You know what I mean? They're pouring more gasoline on it, making it worse. Now it's blazing. You're hot. You're really burning now. And now, everything they do is wrong all the time. You're now assuming all kinds of evil things. Yeah. So the only thing is a change of structure. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. The person who comes in to help you, they may want to just get back to the problem-solving stage. But guess what? The only way to get back to problem-solving is you got to go backwards. You can't go from changing social structure back to, hey, we're good, without peace faking. You got to walk back to hostility. You got to go get your clan that you got on your side. Okay, I was wrong. I'm an idiot. They're not that bad. And they're going to tell you, no, you were right. No, 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 I was wrong. No, no, no. All the gasoline we poured on, because they don't want to be wrong. They pour gasoline on this thing. Like, oh, you can't go admit you're wrong because, I was on your team. That means I was wrong too. Well, that's your problem. I mean, sorry I led you down that road, but I was wrong. And I got to repent.
Yeah.
And they may not want to be your friends anymore, which is another conflict you got to work through. Okay? But you got to walk back. And you got to walk back to all those issues you multiplied, and you got to forgive.
Yeah.
Okay? And you got to go back to all this personal antagonism and say, you're sorry
Yeah.
for all the stupid things I said about you when I was being antagonistic toward you.
Yeah.
What was that problem again we got to work on? You know what I mean? How did this all start?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a slow walk back, which many people don't want to do. So they just stay on the outs.
Yep.
I mean, they stay on the outs, okay? So that is it. Questions, answers, and then we're going to take another break, and we'll come back and wrap up. Any questions, thoughts, comments?
I have a question. I'm not sure how to ask in a way that makes sense, but we were talking about triangulation and how that's like talking to other people in a unproductive way. So you need to talk about things, so how do you do that without triangulating?
Yeah. Well, it really kind of ends up being, it really comes down to the people that you're, and of course, being able to identify, right? What am I doing right now? I'm trying to get a following, or am I really trying to figure out how to get this resolved? And the people on the other side need to be not the kind of people like, girl, you right. You know what I mean? I had a problem with them too. And that's triangulating, okay? I mean, so they need to go, well, did you talk, like Robin, did you talk to them? How do we do it? Come on, let's go deal with it. The Bible tells us how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Matthew 18. Chase them back to the person. I think you ought to go talk to them. I tried to talk to them. They're just so stupid about it. Well, let's go talk to them together. I don't want to. Well, then I don't think there's anything I can do to help you because I'm not going to join you in this nonsense. But when you're ready to talk, let's do that. Let's pray and let's go have that conversation. Because the person is probably not as evil as you've made them out. You know that always in the, you go and you kind of expect, you've assumed, I know what they're going to say. I know the next word out of their mouth. I know they're going to say that. And that's just going to make me madder. And then you've had this whole interaction with the person and you haven't done anything. This is a whole interaction that's taking place. Like, you're like, holy cow. From one text message, like a few words in a text thread, you had I bet they meant that. That's why they put it in caps. I mean, you're like all worked up. Wow, what about a conversation? What about a conversation? We'll have to get with that a little later. Daniel?
Mine was just about what people would call venting.
Venting.
I think that you want to kind of talk to
Yeah.
someone and you're upset yourself and you have to talk it out before you can calm down. But yet you're talking to someone else, so you're triangulating.
Yeah.
You don't want them to triangulate, you just want to calm down by expressing yourself.
I really think it really kind of relies on the maturity of the people with whom you're talking to. Like, it's okay to listen to people and go, man, I hear you. Man, that sounds tough. That's rough. All the things we do, man, that's hard. That's tough. I love you. Jesus loves you. God loves you. However, you know what I mean? We got to get this worked out. You know what I mean?
And I think when you're aware that you're in conflict, like even teaching our girls this, when they can't get along, like now they come and say, Mom, we're having a conflict. It's not, she's this and she's that and gosh, she tried. It's like we're having a conflict. Can you help us work it out? And so I think being just aware that, man, I'm in conflict. I need help. Versus, she drives me crazy and I just got to vent and just,
So yeah, right? So when someone comes in and the first words out of their mouth, they're blank, 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 they're not aware that they're in conflict.
Yeah.
They're in conflict, they maybe just think it's about the other person, as opposed to, okay, I have a conflict, don't know how to deal with it, I'm really frustrated though, and I need some help.
Yeah.
That's a much better conversation. If I come and you go, you know what, Mary Beth, I hate her. I hope she dies. You're going, wow, that's, we got a problem here. You know what I mean?
Hold on. up. You need to pray.
Now, hopefully, if someone comes at you like that, you're going, girl, me too. You know what I mean? Because you want to relate. No, you don't. You can listen to people without agreeing with people. Okay?
Someone had their hand up.
Yes, Debbie.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Who would have a problem? Chris, I can understand us having a problem with. Never MB. Yeah.
On the flip side of that, how do you deal with the people when you approach them like, hey, there's a conflict? There's like, oh no, that's something you need to do.
Yeah, it's true.
It's not a problem. We have a problem. That's your problem.
That's a tough one. That is a tough one, right? So as far as it, what is that? Galatians? Depends on you. Be at peace with all men. Yeah. And so that's about the best we can do, right? Now, hopefully that's not happening church, places like that. But listen, I'm going to let you know, people in church misbehave. It happens. It's a thing.
Because you're in the church.
I'm in the church. That's right. You know, I always say this, the church was fine until they let you in. Whoever you are, you know what I mean? It was just fine to let you in. The fact that they let you in should tell you it's got problems. Amen? So, yes.
I have the microphone. So we're using this because the live stream, people can hear us when we're talking. So I'll pass it to you next, whoever's going to ask questions next. But I was actually going to ask, like, what role do you feel like trust in the relationship plays in the bigger context of...
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit.
Oh, okay, you guys are
no,
going to talk about
but
that.
that's a very good question, you know. And so obviously, trust is critical to conflict, right? And can be eroded over time, but also can be built. But honestly, sometimes conflict is part of what helps. When you work through it, that's how trust gets built. So if you are afraid or scared of, you have a very negative idea of conflict and you don't want to go anywhere near it, you can never really build meaningful trust, you know? And so, yeah, but trust is, that's a good point, Melissa. It's very key. And it's funny because if you never go there, you can't really build the trust.
Yeah.
And you know, like we're up here today, you kind of trust me. But, you know, what do you trust me? How far do you trust me, right? You know, right? We can find that out, you know what I'm saying? You know, yeah, you know, and so it's little things that build trust. So I'll give you a fun example, you know, without giving the full story. I don't have my computer here. And so this belongs to, yeah. And so I was kind of at the Jobs last night. I said, I need a laptop. I got to do this. Blah, blah, blah. And he goes, hey, bro, take my laptop. You know, I said, Bert, I don't want to take your laptop. Laptops are kind of personal. You know, blah, blah, blah. And he said, no, take it. I said, well, don't you have to worry? He goes, no, I'm off. Take it. So he trusted me, just gave it to me. But it's funny because it really built an incredible, interesting level of trust between me and him. And I walked away and I went, only a pure man would just give you his laptop. You guys know what I'm talking about. Pure. He goes, yeah, just take my laptop. You know, I'm going, you know, there was no hesitation. You know, just like, oh yeah, take my laptop. You know, and I open it up. I'm like, okay, that's his mail. Let me close that. I'm like, he just gave me his laptop. Facebook's open. I'm like, he just gave it to me. He trusts me. I trust him. I totally trust this dude. And I drove him home. I heard him speak up here for 3 minutes. He jumped in the car and drove home. We cracked a few jokes, and then he gave me his laptop. So you can build trust really easily.
Especially
you know.
as disciples.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
of God, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if you felt like your question was answered, but I think what Vince was saying is you can only control what you can do
Yeah.
as far as resolving a conflict. And sometimes just being aware that, okay, this person is just not someone that wants to resolve conflicts helps you to deal with that person in a better way, right? Because everyone's not a disciple, everyone's not following God, everyone doesn't want to, resolve conflict, but it's good for us to know that. And
There are some pretty cool things you can do. There's a principle, cup of coffee principle, where you can take someone out for a cup of coffee. You can have a conversation with them. And sometimes, it's good to just be able to say, hey, you know what? I think I blew it, and I just want to apologize. I think I did something that offended you. Maybe they'll never come clean, but, it builds a little trust down the road. You got to realize that, man, as you live in this world, a lot of people, more now than ever, have angst. They're afraid to be in conflict. There's a lot of fear out there right now. Don't want to say the wrong thing, don't want to do the wrong thing, don't want to, how do I say, is it a he, she, it, her? I mean, there's a lot, so people are just like, I'm not trying to say nothing. Everything's offensive. I mean, don't want to hurt anybody's feeling, don't want to offend anybody, and so people are scared. So and the pandemic has told us to stay away from each other. I mean, Satan is having a heyday right now.
yeah.
Stay away from each other and don't say anything, and don't even think it. Don't write it, don't think it, don't say it, don't text it, don't. So people are just like, you know what I mean? So there's a little bit of that going on as well.
I even learned, in the younger generation, there's a label called toxic person. And I'm like, wow, so conflict is like, hey, if there's conflict, you're toxic. I can't be around you.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, it's up to us to be those peacemakers, and we got to lean into this whole mess of the toxic people. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Give me your toxic. Give me your tired. We'll take them all. You know what I mean? Because that's who we are. We're not afraid of all that. You had a question. Okay, great. All right, so we're going to take, yes, Randall. No, go for it.
Comment back to Deb, when she was talking earlier. Something that I found that helps me often. Marissa won't let me have Post-it notes on mirrors in the house, but if I have this imaginary Post-it notes that are the problem, and in the morning, so I'm loud enough I can.
Well, there's people online that are listening.
Okay. But I see this Post-it note in the mirror when I get up to shave, and every day, you're the problem. You're the problem. Now, I don't want to take that over the top and then go into depression, but have a decent balance on it. But if I always remember I'm the problem to start with, then it helps.
That's a very simple way to stay humble every day. But for some people, for some of us, as we said, we're the problem every day, it takes us in a different direction. I'm the problem. So maybe you don't put that up. You put, Jesus loves me. It's possible that I could be the problem. So does that make sense? All right, let's take 5. We'll come back and we'll wrap up the next one. Okay, take 5. Janice, can we get to module 2? All right, everyone. If we can come on back in, we'll get started here with Module 2. And so,
Told me they don't like sushi.
almost, yeah. So, real quickly, I'm going to move on from the Q&A from the last section because I just want to kind of keep moving here and get us out for lunch at a decent hour so that we can wrap up at a decent time the day. Try to get you out of here definitely by 4 o'clock. All right, so in this next section, our objective, we want to get a chance to share any new insights or perspectives from synthesizing Model 1, and really thinking about your conflict. And so you now know sources of conflict. You now know sort of the levels of conflict. You now know a little bit about the stages of conflict. And so what we're going to do, we're going to use the stuff from Module 1, the sources of the conflict, and we want you to be able to identify what was the source of your conflict, the conflict you were working on. What was the source of it? Okay? And there are the sources, tasks, goals, values, those things, right? They're all in Module 1. What do you think was the source of your conflict? In the mind conflict example that you use, what do you think the source of your conflict was? Okay? And then I also want you to think about the levels of conflict, okay? Although we said intrapersonal is where it all starts, but what kind of level was it in? Was it an interpersonal? Was it an intragroup, intergroup? Is it a systemic thing you have a conflict with? Okay? And then we want to think about the spread of conflict. Is it still at the problem-solving stage? Well, probably not, right? Is it at the personal antagonism stage, that conflict? Okay? Is it at the issue multiplication stage? Is it at the hostility stage, or where did it get? So when you think about that conflict, your conflict, what stage did it get to? Triangulation? Like, where is that conflict now, or where did it get? So I want you to spend a few moments, because this is a way to reinforce what we've just done, and write those down. Where do you think it is? It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not going to grade them. Okay, so I know you're all, high-achieving Americans, so you want to do it right. But yeah, just try to think the best you can. And then you're going to get back with your partner, and you're going to share a little bit with them. Okay, go. Okay, so if you open up Module 2, thank you. Open up Module 2. And on page 23, if you see Module 2, page 23, this is the My Conflict Example Reflection. So you're going to use Module 1, and on the sources of conflict, which you can refer back to Module, what was the source of your My Conflict? I'm calling it My Conflict, your conflict. That's the one you wrote down. So now I want you to put, what do you think the source of that conflict was? And then you're going to write down what level that conflict was. The levels are intrapersonal, interpersonal, intergroup, systemic. And then you're going to write down, the next one is what did it spread to? Personal antagonism, triangulation, issue multiplication, or was there a divorce or a separation that took place? And when I say divorce, I mean like, get out. Like, I can't live with that roommate anymore. That's a separation. I'm not saying it was bad or good. I'm just saying that's what ended up happening. And then any new observations or insights about your conflict from Module 1. Okay, I'll give you a few minutes to do that.
you had enough time to answer those questions, so we're going to get with our stranger partner, and we're going to share what you guys wrote down as far as your own personal conflict.
So just share among yourself with, whatever you wrote down, however you think. It doesn't have to be perfect. No one's grading or judging. All right? Okay, go. We'll only give you 5 minutes for this. You get 2 minutes each. All right, go. Okay. All right, so let's see. Testing.
everybody? Mine worked. Let's finish up our conversation.
All right.
You guys done?
You guys hear me?
No, they can't hear you. They can hear me.
How's that? Better? Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing.
Hello? In and out. Oh, this on now. There we go.
I'm sure I messed up. Yes. That works with my computer. That works with everything. Just turn it off and turn it back on. Testing. All right, here we go. Okay, guys, good job. Good job. So we're going to move on to a biblical approach to my conflict example. Okay? A biblical approach. So I want you to be thinking about your conflict as we go through this, as well as taking in all of this. This works better if you're working on a conflict so that you know how to deal with them in the future, okay? So a biblical approach. So bottom line, when you believe it's sin, okay, if you believe that a person has sinned against you, or you believe that, you know, what they've done is sinful, you have some options, right? Okay, you could sin against them. You can forgive and let it go. Or you can bring the matter to them. Those are your options, right? Now, I don't think any of us are going to admit that, you know, we believe sinning against someone is a good option. And yet we've done it. We've all sinned against people when they've sinned against us. Sinned against God, right? So, when you believe it's sin, you sin against them, okay? But the Bible's really not going to support you there, right? Okay? You're not going to find a whole lot of biblical support for that. So that's a different workshop that I don't have anything for, okay? Just go sin against them, all right? So I don't think that's going to be helpful, and I don't think it's going to stop conflict in your life or help the conflict resolution process, all right? Not going to make you a peacemaker, all right? It's not going to happen. So when someone sins against you or sins against your friend or sins against your gender or your race or your country or your planet or whatever you want to call it, against heaven and earth, okay? So, you know, if your goal is to just go sin against them, then it's not going to de-escalate the conflict. Or it may for a while. You know, you may be able to defeat them and kill a bunch of people and take away their weapons. But eventually they come back. You know what I'm saying? Eventually they come back and they cause more problems, right? So there's a great article out there. I forget who wrote it, but it talked about, you know, it's Monday morning quarterbacking when it came to 9/11. You know, how America could have responded with grace and peace and how different the world could be. I don't know. You know what I mean? Don't know. So, but I don't think we think Americans Christian, do we? We don't believe that, right? So you kind of got to expect unchristian people to do unchristian things. But whatever happens systemically, you still have a responsibility of what you're going to do personally. Does that make sense? You can't control that. I don't think any of you get a phone call on how to deal with 9/11? No, you didn't get the call? Neither did I. So nothing we can do about that, okay? So when you believe it's sin, you can forgive and let it go. And, a man's wisdom gives him patience. It is to the glory to overlook an offense. Proverbs 16:32, better a patient man than a warrior, a man who controls his temper than one who takes a city. Okay? And this is all in your hand. This is all in your book, right? No, it's not in your book? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so am I going too fast? All right, good. Okay, good. All right. So you got to decide, right? You got to look on here, and there are things that you can probably forgive and let go.
Yeah, so it's good to forgive and let go if the frequency is low, and it's just something that doesn't happen very often, and there's low impact. For example, someone not putting their shoes up when they come in the door. They forgot to do that one time. You can let that go. Like, oh, I'll take care of that, right? If it's low impact, high frequency, you can decide when you're going to deal with that because it's low impact. It's not destroying your world, but it's happening a lot. So maybe it's annoying you, it's starting to bother you, and in those situations you have to deal with it. But you can decide when is the best time to deal with that. So I think deal with it, but decide when it's best to deal with it. If it's high impact, high frequency, you got to deal with it right away because the impact's high and the frequency is high, and if you don't deal with it, then things are going to get really bad. Vince gave some examples of unfaithfulness in a relationship, or lying and deceit. Like, if it's happening all the time, you got to deal with that right away. And then if it's high impact, low frequency, you have to deal with that too, right? But I think in that situation, you got to decide when is the best time to deal with it. So I think just being aware. Did I forget one? High frequency, high. I got them all. Okay. So I think what I love about this is that it just makes you more aware of, okay, I'm in conflict. This is what type of a conflict it is. Okay, do I need to deal with this now? Do I need to deal with this later? Do I just need to let it go? It's not that big of a deal. Because sometimes we can just react to everything. Even things that aren't a big deal, we can just react. Why'd you leave your shoes in the floor? Oh my gosh. And we make it a big deal, and it's really not a big deal. And so I think, that's what I love about this, is that it's really helped me to be more aware of how I'm responding to just normal, everyday situations. And, like, if it's frequent, if it's not frequent, if it's high impact, low impact, it changes how I respond. So.
Yeah, and I think being able to understand that and being able to take the moment to think about it, right? And I will say this, guys, we're busy. We're busy, and the busier we are, the more we have to assume. The busier you are, the more you have to assume. And assumptions only cause conflict. You're so busy, you don't have time. You're just so busy, they probably did that because they did because you're like, is that really true? You ever stop to go, is that really what's going on? You know what I mean? Is that really what they're thinking? You know what I mean? Is that what's really happening right now? Is that person really being racist? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I'm just so busy, I don't have time to do nothing but stop and think about, oh yeah, that's what happened. So I'm sitting in a class, one of my classes, and this class is about organizational conflict. We're learning about how to deal with organizational conflict. And my professor shares a conflict story, and he shares it all the way through. And so that night we go out to dinner, and we're sitting with the students, and we're sitting around having dinner. And I brought up, I say, hey, let's talk about that conflict. Let's do a little post-mortem on that conflict my professor was talking about. Do a little autopsy on it. What do you think happened? He didn't share the whole end story. And so I said, I've gone through this conflict. In addition to this, I've probably done, 250, 300 hours of training. And I mean, doing COVID, I was doing conflict resolution and mediation training all over the country. I was in Martha's Vineyard learning stuff. Like, the people said, where are you from? I'm in Missouri, you know, but I was just gobbling up all of this stuff. So anyway, I won't say I was, so anyway, we were doing a postmortem on this, and one of my classmates says about my professor's conflict, says that this guy is a white male, he's used to getting his way, he used to being in charge, and blah, 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 and she just rattled off the whole party line. And I went, whoa, how'd you get all of that? Like, they're both white males. So, you know, my professor was in conflict with another person. It was a big conflict they grew up in. He was sharing it, like his conflict story, and sharing about what was going on. But he didn't share what the backstory, what went on. I said, what do you think was going on? And this person in my class said, white male, used to be in control. I thought, but they're both white males. But he was younger, he was empowered. It was all the stuff I was going, or could there be more to the story? And I do church, and I know when this happened to be a conflict that took place within the church. I said, there's more to the story. There's more. So we kind of debate and talk about it. So we go back the next day, and we bring it up in the class. And the first thing out of my professor's mouth says, there's way more to the story. You know what I mean? And he said, how, somebody had, the church was in upheaval, there was this, that, and the other. This family was this, they didn't have any process, and blah, 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 all these things going on. And my two classmates looked over at me, I'm like, told you. And I said, let me guess. It wasn't about that thing. He said, it's never about that thing. When conflict happens, it's never about the thing you think it's about. It's always about something else that they're not talking about. And so typically when conflict happens, right, you might be, by the time it gets to the antagonistic stage, they're acting like it was about something else. When you do a little deeper dive, there's more there. But my point in all of that is that this classmate who is learning this material started assuming all of this stuff about something that happened 30 years ago. I'm going, what? You know what I mean? Like, aren't you supposed to be no better than to assume all of these things? And I go, hey, we all assume.
Yep.
And when you assume things, you end up creating more tension and more angst than ever. So anyway, we get in a rush. We're so much in a rush that all we have time to do is to assume things about other person. That was a really off-topic story I just shared with you. I don't even know if it relates or not, but there you go. Let's move on. So anyway, you can decide how you want to deal with conflict, how you want to deal with the matters. And I think even thinking through it, like, okay, where is this? Is this having high impact, or is this having low impact? Is it something I need to let go or something I don't need to let go? And that's where you can go talk to an advisor and say, hey, tell me what you think here. But ultimately, you got to make the decision because you got to live with it. I usually have a rule of thumb. If I keep thinking about it, I probably need to talk about it. If it keeps coming up in my mind, I probably need to talk about it.
Yep.
And I need to figure out how I'm going to forgive and let go. So you can forgive and let go. So we're going to watch this video here. And Dave's going to pull us up for us. I think this is a helpful little video. Thanks, Daniel. Oh, no sound. You'll get it. I love how we all resisted telling Daniel that it was on mute. That was really cool. Because I can tell you the sound guys in the booth, they go, we know it's on mute, stop yelling at us. So.
Religions, I also mean I'm Irshad.
There you go. You got it. I love on Zoom when people start doing that. You make a mistake, everybody starts chatting like, you know, we can't hear. We know. We can't see it now. So it's great.
I'm Manji. I'm an educator and author of the new book, Don't Label Me. And I'm here to propose that while more and more schools are teaching young people how not to be offensive, they also need to be teaching a new generation how not to be offended. First, giving offense is the price of diversity, not an impediment to diversity. Now, by diversity, I mean more than different complexions and genders and religions. I also mean different points of view. For example, I'm a Muslim, and I believe in reconciling my faith with freedom. Some Muslims are appalled by my viewpoint. Others are delighted by it. Most are somewhere in between, which goes to show that even within groups, there is diversity. Teaching young people how not to be offended is to equip them to embrace people as complex individuals and not just as mascots of this or that tribe. The second reason for teaching kids how not to be offended: we grow by engaging those with whom we disagree. When we take offense, we're in reactive mode, and we miss opportunities to ask people why they believe what they do. Whenever I've asked that of fellow Muslims who are outraged by my viewpoint, I've gleaned information with which I can reframe my arguments in ways that they can hear. By refusing to be offended that they're offended, I've been able to stand my ground while seeking common ground. And that's necessary in our hyper-polarized times. All this brings me to the third reason that schools should be teaching students the how of not taking offense at everything. It's a life skill, no matter what kind of life you have. To tackle nagging problems in your family, with friends, at work, in the wider world, you need buy-in. How do you get it? Not by finding excuses to shame the holdouts, but by hearing them out. Look, I'm not saying that we should clam up whenever we encounter intolerance or outright hate. Of course we should stand up to it. The operative question is how. Bruce Lee said, "Be like water." Water can't predict where it needs to go, just as humans don't know what the future holds. But water always finds a way around or over or through obstacles, not by labeling them, not by demanding that they disappear, but by treating them with grace. Think of it as moral martial arts. I'd go to school for that.
Cool. So, yeah, pretty cool, huh?
You ever wondered what actors and
right,
actresses
great.
do when they have to get in shape really fast for a movie?
It's still playing. No. Yeah, so, you know, I like that video because I really think that, I love what she said. Teaching our kids how to understand not just be mascots of a belief, yeah, you know, not just mascots of something that comes along, and it's a little bit how our kids are right now. They, like, why do you believe that? I don't want to be on the other side. I'm just like, woo, you know. So I'd be curious. I'm tempted. I haven't done this. Like, ask my neighbor. So why do you have that sign in your yard? I don't know. Everybody else was getting a sign. I just thought I would get a sign. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not offended. Well, a little bit offended, but you know, but that's beside the point. But I was like, but why do you have that sign in your yard? You know. Anyway, but I'm not gonna do that because that might cause more problems. So anyway, so what options do we have, right? What options have you taken to deal with your conflict? Okay. Has your option worked out for you? And what could you have done differently. So I want you to think about your conflict. Have you taken any options, or have you done anything? Have you sinned against? Have you forgiven and let it go? Have you taken it to them? And so what we're going to do next is this next section is actually on the conversation for resolution. And so you can bring it to them. That's the third thing. Matthew 18:15, it says, if your brother sins against you, and go show him your fault just between the two of you. If he listens to you, you have won your brother over. Now, it's really interesting when the Bible tells us to do this, because it doesn't really tell us how to do it. You know what I mean? Like, it says, go to your brother, show him their fault. That's it. So, but sometimes that can in and of itself create conflict. You know what I mean? Like, hey, the Bible says I need to come and show you your fault. Like, don't you mean you need to bring your fault? It's like that in and of itself causes problems, right? And so I think there's some opportunities to sort of kind of reframe this or think about how this goes, how this would look, how this would work. Because really, in some cases, you don't really know if the other person is at fault. And more than that, you don't know if they're willing to recognize whether they were at fault or acknowledge that they were at fault. And so there's a way then that you need to approach people that doesn't put them on the defensive and escalate the conversation even more, which is sometimes kind of what we do, right? Some of us have this thing, I just say what I want to say, speak my mind. You just have to deal with it. Like, nope, that's problematic, That's going to cause more problems. That's going to escalate things, And now how you talk to me, that's the issue, not the thing that we're talking about. You don't ever talk to me in that tone, right? You ever had that happen? Your kids come to you, they want to talk to you, they come to you with the wrong tone, you're like, hold on, buddy. Okay, I don't know what you're talking about, but you need to back up and get out of here and come in here again, There'll be none of that nonsense. So, or sister. So show them their fault, at least check in, right? So how do you do that? You need skills, you need tools in order to get that done. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to come back after lunch, and we're going to tackle this next section. We're going to finish up this. This is a conversation for resolution. So with that, I'm going to let you go to lunch a little bit early. So why don't we head out to lunch now? And no, you guys are going out to lunch, right? Yeah. Okay, good. So why don't you head out now, and then what do you think? How about we come? 1:15, Janice? Where did Janice go? How about we come back at 1:15? That gives us 90 minutes. Is that enough time?
That's a long time for lunch.
1:15. How's that sound? We'll come back at 1:15. We'll answer any questions. We'll finish up this, and we'll do the third module, okay?
Awesome.
Guys, great job. Thanks for being attentive.
Awesome.